Welcome to the terrorist and extremist organization Iceberg. Layer 1.
Amateur video purportedly shows Islamic State militants carrying out a mass execution in Palmyra's ancient amphitheater.
The Islamic State, also known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, and by its Arabic acronym Daesh, is a transnational Salafi jihadist group and a former unrecognized quasi-state. Its origins were in the Jaish al-Taifa al-Mansura organization founded by Abu Omar al-Baghdadi in 2004, which fought alongside al-Qaeda during the Iraqi insurgency. The group gained global prominence in 2014 when its militants successfully captured large territories in northwestern Iraq and eastern Syria, taking advantage of the ongoing Syrian civil war. By the end of 2015, it ruled an area with an estimated population of 12 million people, where it enforced its extremist interpretation of Islamic law, managed an annual budget exceeding $1 billion, and commanded more than 30,000 fighters. After a protracted and intense conflict with American, Iraqi, and Kurdish forces, ISIS lost control of all its Middle Eastern territories by 2019. It subsequently reverted to insurgency tactics, operating from remote hideouts while continuing its propaganda efforts. These efforts have garnered it a significant following in northern and Sahelian Africa. Between 2004 and 2013, ISIS was allied to al-Qaeda, primarily under the name Islamic State of Iraq, and participated in the Iraqi insurgency against the American occupation. The group later changed its name to Islamic State of Iraq and Levant for about a year, before declaring itself to be a worldwide caliphate, called simply the Islamic State. As a self-proclaimed caliphate, it demanded the religious, political, and military obedience of Muslims worldwide, despite the rejection of its legitimacy by mainstream Muslims and its statehood by the United Nations and most governments. Over the following years, the Iraqi armed forces and the Syrian Democratic Forces pushed back the ISIS and degraded its financial and military infrastructure, assisted by advisors, weapons, training, supplies, and airstrikes by the American-led coalition, and later by Russian airstrikes, bombings, cruise missile attacks, and scorched earth tactics across Syria, which focused mostly on razing Syrian opposition strongholds rather than ISIS bases. By March 2019, ISIS lost the last of its territories in West Asia, although it maintained a significant territorial presence in Africa as of 2023. Designated a terrorist organization by the United Nations and others, ISIS was known for its massive human rights violations. During its rule in northern Iraq, it launched a genocide against Yazidis, engaged in persecution of Christians and Shia Muslims, publicized videos of beheadings of soldiers, journalists, and aid workers, and destroyed several cultural sites. The group also perpetrated massacres in territories outside of its control in events widely described as terrorist attacks, such as the November 2015 Paris attacks.
You have declared a jihad against the United States.
Al-Qaeda is a pan-Islamist militant organization led by Sunni jihadists who self-identify as a vanguard spearheading a global Islamist revolution to unite the Muslim world under a supranational Islamic state known as the Caliphate. Its members are mostly composed of Arabs, but also include people from other ethnic groups. Al-Qaeda has mounted attacks on civilian, economic, and military targets of the U.S. and its allies, such as the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombings, the USS Cole bombing, and the September 11 attacks. The organization is designated as a terrorist group by NATO, UN Security Council, the European Union, and various countries around the world. The organization was founded in a series of meetings held in Peshawar during 1988, attended by Abdullah Azzam, Osama bin Laden, Mohammed Atef, Ayman al-Zawahiri, and other veterans of the Soviet-Afghan War. Building upon the networks of Maktab al-Khidamat, the founding members decided to create an organization named Al-Qaeda to serve as a vanguard for jihad. When Saddam Hussein invaded and occupied Kuwait in 1990, bin Laden offered to support Saudi Arabia by sending his Mujahideen fighters. His offer was rebuffed by the Saudi government, which instead sought the aid of the United States. The stationing of U.S. troops in Arabian Peninsula prompted bin Laden to declare a jihad against the Saudi Arabian rulers, whom he denounced as murtad, apostates, and against the U.S. During 1992-1996, Al-Qaeda established its headquarters in Sudan until it was expelled in 1996. It shifted its base to the Taliban-ruled Afghanistan and later expanded to other parts of the world, primarily in the Middle East and South Asia. In 1996 and 1998, bin Laden issued two fatwa that demanded the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Saudi Arabia. In 1998, Al-Qaeda conducted the U.S. Embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania, which killed 224 people. the U.S. retaliated by launching Operation Infinite Reach against al-Qaeda targets in Afghanistan and Sudan. In 2001, al-Qaeda carried out the September 11 attacks, resulting in nearly 3,000 deaths, long-term health consequences of nearby residents, damaging global economic markets, triggering drastic geopolitical changes, as well as generating profound cultural influence across the world. The U.S. launched the War on Terror in response and invaded Afghanistan to depose the Taliban and destroy al-Qaeda. In 2003, a U.S.-led coalition invaded Iraq, overthrowing the Ba'athist regime, which they falsely accused of having ties with al-Qaeda. In 2004, al-Qaeda launched its Iraqi regional branch. After pursuing him for almost a decade, the U.S. military killed bin Laden in Pakistan in May 2011. Al-Qaeda members believe that a Judeo-Christian alliance, led by the United States, is waging a war against Islam and conspiring to destroy Islam. Al-Qaeda also opposes man-made laws and seek to implement Sharia Islamic law in Muslim countries. AQ fighters characteristically deploy tactics such as suicide attacks, ingamasi, and istishadi operations involving simultaneous bombing of several targets in battle zones. Al-Qaeda's Iraq branch, which later morphed into the Islamic State of Iraq after 2006, was responsible for numerous sectarian attacks against Shias during its Iraqi insurgency. Al-Qaeda ideologues envision the violent removal of all foreign and secularist influences in Muslim countries, which it denounces as corrupt deviations. Following the death of bin Laden in 2011, Al-Qaeda vowed to avenge his killing. The group was then led by Egyptian Ayman al-Zawahiri until his death in 2022. As of 2021, they have reportedly suffered from a deterioration of central command over its regional operations.
For over a decade, Abubakar Shekau spread his brand of death and violence across northern Nigeria, killing over 40,000 people and causing 2 million to flee.
Boko Haram is an Islamist militant organization based in northeastern Nigeria, which is also active in Chad, Niger, northern Cameroon, and Mali. Boko Haram was the world's deadliest terror group during part of the mid-2010s, according to the Global Terrorism Index. In 2016, the group split, resulting in the emergence of a hostile faction known as the Islamic State's West Africa Province. Founded by Mohammed Yusuf in 2002, the group was led by Abubakar Shekau from 2009 until his death in 2021, although it splintered into other groups after Yusuf's death and also in 2015. When the group was first formed, their main goal was to purify, meaning to spread Sunni Islam, and destroy Shia Islam in northern Nigeria, believing jihad should be delayed until the group was strong enough to overthrow the Nigerian government. The group formerly aligned itself with the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. The group has been known for its brutality, and since the insurgency started in 2009, Boko Haram has killed tens of thousands of people in frequent attacks against the police, armed forces, and civilians. It has resulted in the deaths of more than 300,000 children and has displaced 2.3 million from their homes. Boko Haram has contributed to regional food crises and famines. After its founding in 2002, Boko Haram's increasing radicalization led to the suppression operation by the Nigerian military and the killing of its leader Mohammed Yusuf in July 2009. Its unexpected resurgence, following a mass prison break in September 2010 in Bauchi, was accompanied by increasingly sophisticated attacks, initially against soft targets, but progressing in 2011 to include suicide bombings of police buildings and the United Nations office in Abuja. The government's establishment of a state of emergency at the beginning of 2012, extended in the following year to cover the entire northeast of Nigeria, led to an increase in both security force abuses and militant attacks. Of the 2.3 million people displaced by the conflict since May 2013, at least 250,000 left Nigeria and fled to Cameroon, Chad, or Niger. Boko Haram killed over 6,600 people in 2014. The group has carried out massacres including the killing by fire of 59 schoolboys in February 2014 and mass abductions including the kidnapping of 276 schoolgirls in Chibok, Borno State, Nigeria in April 2014. Corruption in the security services and human rights abuses committed by them have hampered efforts to counter the unrest. In mid-2014, the militants gained control of swaths of territory in and around their home state of Borno, estimated at 50,000 square kilometers in January 2015, but did not capture the state capital, Maiduguri, where the group was originally based. On 7th March 2015, Boko Haram's leader Abubakar Shekau pledged allegiance to the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. According to the BBC, due to internal disputes between the two groups, hundreds of terrorists left Boko Haram and formed their own organization named Islamic State's West Africa Province. In September 2015, the Director of Information at the Defense Headquarters of Nigeria announced that all Boko Haram camps had been destroyed, but attacks from the group continue. In 2019, the President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, claimed that Boko Haram was technically defeated. Shekau was killed and confirmed to be dead in May 2021.
Al-Shabaab, terrorist, Al-Qaeda,
Harakat al-Shabaab al-Mujahideen, commonly known as al-Shabaab, is a Sunni Islamist military and political organization based in Somalia and active elsewhere in East Africa. It is actively involved in the ongoing Somali civil war and incorporates elements of Somali nationalism into its Islamist cause. Allegiant to the militant pan-Islamist organization Al-Qaeda since 2012, it has also been suspected of forging ties with Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Formed in the mid-2000s as part of the Islamic Courts Union, Al-Shabaab came to prominence during the 2006-2009 Somalia War, during which it presented itself as a vehicle for the waging of armed resistance against the occupying Ethiopian army. In subsequent years, it gained popular support from Somalis and became a dominant force in South and Central Somalia, defending large swathes of territory by fighting against the African Union mission to Somalia and the federal government of Somalia, as well as the latter's transitional predecessor. Al-Shabaab gained international prominence due to its recruitment of foreign fighters, including fighters who are from Western countries. Countries including the United States, the United Kingdom, and the United Arab Emirates have designated it as a terrorist organization, and the United States has militarily intervened in order to fight against the group. Between 2011 and 2013, a coalition which mostly consisted of East African forces, led by the Somali government, wrested a significant amount of territory from al-Shabaab, including the capital city, Mogadishu. During the same period, the group was plagued by internal conflicts over its leadership and ideological direction, which intensified when, in February 2012, al-Shabaab's leadership pledged allegiance to al-Qaeda. It suffered further military losses in 2014 as a result of Operation Indian Ocean and the killing of its emir, Ahmed Abdi Godani, in an American drone strike, as well as the killing of other leaders. For several years thereafter, al-Shabaab retreated from the major cities, but it remained influential in many rural areas, and it prioritized guerrilla and terror attacks over territorial acquisitions. It is responsible for many high-fatality attacks, such as the 2013 Westgate shopping mall attack and the October 2017 Mogadishu bombings. Apart from its activities in Somalia, the group also operates in other East African countries, extending its insurgency to Kenya's border regions and carrying out an incursion into Ethiopia in late July 2022. Attendant to its recent resurgence, it was estimated to have increased its combat strength to between 7,000 and 12,000 fighters in February 2022.
Congratulations to all of Muslim people. It is a very happy day.
A year ago, they said they couldn't believe they took Kabul so easily. They celebrated then, and they still are.
The Taliban, which also refers to itself by its state name, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, is a militant organization in Afghanistan with an ideology comprising elements of Pashtun nationalism and the Deobandi current of Islamic fundamentalism. It ruled approximately three-quarters of the country from 1996 to 2001, before being overthrown following the American invasion. It recaptured Kabul on 15 August 2021 following the departure of most coalition forces after nearly 20 years of insurgency, and currently controls all of the country. However, its government is not recognized by any country. The Taliban government has been internationally condemned for restricting human rights in Afghanistan, including the right of women and girls to work and to have an education. The Taliban emerged in September 1994 as one of the prominent factions in the Afghan Civil War, and largely consisted of students from the Pashtun areas of eastern and southern Afghanistan who had been educated in traditional Islamic schools. Under the leadership of Mullah Omar, R. 1996-2001, the movement spread throughout most of Afghanistan, shifting power away from the Mujahideen warlords. In 1996, the group administered roughly three-quarters of the country and established the first Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. The Taliban's government was opposed by the Northern Alliance militia, which seized parts of northeast Afghanistan and largely maintained international recognition as a continuation of the interim Islamic State of Afghanistan. The Taliban held control of most of the country until being overthrown after the United States invasion of Afghanistan in December 2001. Many members of the Taliban fled to neighboring Pakistan. After being overthrown, the Taliban launched an insurgency to fight the US-backed Islamic Republic of Afghanistan and the NATO-led International Security Assistance Force in the war in Afghanistan. In May 2002, Exiled members formed the Council of Leaders based in the city of Quetta in Pakistan. Under Hibatullah Akhundzada's leadership in May 2021, the Taliban launched a military offensive that culminated in the fall of Kabul on 15 August 2021 and the Taliban regaining control of Afghanistan. The Islamic Republic was dissolved and the Islamic Emirate was re-established. During their rule from 1996 to 2001, the Taliban enforced a strict interpretation of Sharia, or Islamic law, and were widely condemned for massacres against Afghan civilians, harsh discrimination against religious and ethnic minorities, denial of UN food supplies to starving civilians, destruction of cultural monuments, banning women from school and most employment, and prohibition of most music. The Taliban committed a cultural genocide against the Afghan people by destroying their historical and cultural texts, artifacts, and sculptures. Following their return to power in 2021, the Afghanistan government budget lost 80% of its funding, and food insecurity became widespread. The Taliban returned Afghanistan to many policies implemented under its previous rule, including banning women from holding almost any jobs, requiring women to wear head-to-toe coverings such as the burqa, blocking women from traveling without male guardians, and banning all education for girls. Hamas, an acronym of its official name, the Islamic Resistance Movement, is a Palestinian Sunni Islamist political and military organization governing the Gaza Strip of the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territories. Hamas was founded by Palestinian imam and activist Ahmed Yassin in 1987, after the outbreak of the First Intifada against the Israeli occupation. It emerged from his 1973 Mujama al-Islamiyah Islamic charity affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. In 2006, Hamas won the Palestinian legislative election by campaigning on Palestinian armed resistance against the Israeli occupation, thus securing a majority in the Palestinian Legislative Council. In 2007, Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip from rival Palestinian faction Fatah, which it has governed since separately from the Palestinian National Authority. This was followed by an Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip with Egyptian support and multiple wars with Israel, including in 2008 to 2009, 2012, 2014, and 2021. The ongoing 2023 war began after Hamas launched an attack, killing both civilians and soldiers and taking hostages back to Gaza. The attack has been described as the biggest military setback for Israel since the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, which Israel has responded to in an ongoing ground invasion of Gaza. While initially seeking a state in all of mandatory Palestine, Hamas began acquiescing to 1967 borders in the agreements it signed with Fatah in 2005, 2006, and 2007. In 2017, Hamas released a new charter that supported a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders without recognizing Israel. Hamas's repeated offers of a truce for a period of 100 years based on the 1967 borders are seen by many as consistent with a two-state solution, while others say that Hamas retains the long-term objective of establishing one state in former mandatory Palestine. The 1988 Hamas charter was widely described as anti-Semitic. Hamas's 2017 revised charter removing anti-Semitic language and stated that Hamas's struggle was with Zionists, not Jews. Hamas promotes Palestinian nationalism in an Islamic context. Hamas is widely popular in Palestinian society largely due to its anti-Israeli stance. Hamas has carried out attacks against Israeli civilians, including suicide bombings and indiscriminate rocket attacks. These actions have led human rights groups to accuse it of war crimes, and Argentina, Australia, Canada, Israel, Japan, Paraguay, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, the United States, and the European Union to designate Hamas as a terrorist organization. In 2018, a motion at the United Nations to condemn Hamas was rejected.
Black people and white people are nowhere related. In my opinion, I think black people evolved from animals.
The Ku Klux Klan, commonly shortened to the KKK or the Klan, is the name of several historical and current American white supremacist, far-right terrorist organizations and hate groups. The Klan was the first organized terror movement in American history. Their primary targets are African Americans, Hispanics, Jews, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, Italian Americans, Irish Americans, and Catholics, as well as immigrants, leftists, homosexuals, Muslims, atheists, and abortion providers. 3 separate clans have existed in 3 non-overlapping time periods. Each comprised local chapters with little or no central direction. Each has advocated extremist reactionary positions such as white nationalism, anti-immigration, and, especially in later iterations, Nordicism, anti-Semitism, anti-Catholicism, prohibition, right-wing populism, anti-communism, homophobia, anti-atheism, and Islamophobia. The first Klan, founded by Confederate veterans in the late 1860s, would assault and murder politically active black people and their allies in the South. The second iteration of the Klan originated in the late 1910s and was the first to use cross burnings and white hooded robes. The KKK of the 1920s had a nationwide membership in the millions and reflected a cross-section of the native-born white population. The third Klan formed in the mid-20th century, largely as a reaction to the growing civil rights movement. It committed murders and bombings to achieve its aims. All three movements have called for the purification of American society and are all considered far-right extremist organizations. In each era, membership was secret, and estimates of the total were highly exaggerated by both friends and enemies. The first Klan, established in the wake of the Civil War, was a defining organization of the Reconstruction era. According to historian Fergus Bordewich, the Klan was the first organized terror movement in American history. Federal law enforcement began taking action against it around 1871. The Klan sought to overthrow Republican state governments in the South, especially by using voter intimidation and targeted violence against African American leaders. The Klan was organized into numerous independent chapters across the southern United States. Each chapter was autonomous and highly secretive about membership and plans. Members made their own, often colorful, costumes, robes, masks, and pointed hats designed to be terrifying and to hide their identities. The second Klan started in 1915 as a small group in Georgia. It suddenly started to grow after 1920 and flourished nationwide in the early and mid-1920s, including urban areas of the Midwest and West. Taking inspiration from D.W. Griffith's 1915 silent film, The Birth of a Nation, which mythologized the founding of the first Klan, it employed marketing techniques and a popular fraternal organization structure. Rooted in local Protestant communities, it sought to maintain white supremacy, often took a pro-prohibition stance, and it opposed Jews, while also stressing its opposition to the alleged political power of the Pope and the Catholic Church. This second Klan flourished both in the South and northern states. It was funded by initiation fees and selling its members a standard white costume. The chapters did not have dues. It used K-words, which were similar to those used by the first Klan, while adding cross-burnings and mass parades to intimidate others. It rapidly declined in the latter half of the 1920s. The third and current manifestation of the KKK emerged after 1950 in the form of localized and isolated groups that use the KKK name. They have focused on opposition to the civil rights movement, often using violence and murder to suppress activists. This manifestation is classified as a hate group by the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center. As of 2016, the Anti-Defamation League puts total KKK membership nationwide at around 3,000, while the Southern Poverty Law Center puts it at 6,000 members total. The second and third incarnations of the Ku Klux Klan made frequent references to a false mythologized perception of America's Anglo-Saxon blood, harkening back to 19th century nativism. Although members of the KKK swear to uphold Christian morality, Christian denominations widely denounce them.
What I'm doing here, I'm not trying to convert you to any religion, or to any cult, or to any creed. I don't have any belief system. I don't have any theology.
The Rajneesh movement is a religious movement inspired by the Indian mystic Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, also known as Osho. They used to be known as Rajneeshis, or Orange People, because of the orange they used from 1970 until 1985. Members of the movement are sometimes called Oshoites in the Indian press. The movement was controversial in the 1970s and 1980s due to the founders' hostility first to Hindu morality in India and later to Christian morality in the United States. In the Soviet Union, the movement was banned as being contrary to positive aspects of Indian culture and to the aims of the youth protest movement in Western countries. The positive aspects were allegedly being subverted by Rajneesh, whom the Soviet government considered a reactionary ideologue of the monopolistic bourgeoisie of India and a promoter of consumerism in a traditional Hindu guise. In Oregon, the movement's large intentional community of the early 1980s, called Rajneeshpuram, caused immediate tensions in the local community for its attempts to take over the nearby town of Antelope, and later, the county seat of the Dalles. At the peak of these tensions, a circle of leading members of the Rajneeshpuram, Oregon commune was arrested for crimes, including an attempted assassination plot to murder U.S. Attorney Charles H. Turner as part of the United States' first recorded bioterror attack calculated to influence the outcome of a local election in their favor. The effort ultimately failed. Salmonella bacteria were deployed to infect salad products in local restaurants and shops, which poisoned several hundred people. The Bhagwan, as Rajneesh was then called, was deported from the United States in 1985 as part of his Alford plea deal following the convictions of his staff and right-hand Ma Anand Sheela, who were found guilty of the attack. After his deportation, 21 countries denied him entry. The movement's headquarters eventually returned to Pune, present-day Pune, India. The Oregon Commune was destroyed in September 1985. The movement in India gradually received a more positive response from the surrounding society, especially after the founder's death in 1990. The Osho International Foundation OIF, previously Rajneesh International Foundation RIF, is managed by an inner circle set up by Rajneesh before his death. They jointly administer Rajneesh's estate and operate the Osho International Meditation Resort in Pune. In the late 1990s, rival factions challenged OIF's copyright holdings over Rajneesh's works and the validity of its royalty claims on publishing or reprinting of materials. In the United States, following a 10-year legal battle with Osho Friends International, OFI, the OFI lost its exclusive rights over the trademark Osho in January 2009. There are a number of smaller centers of the movement in India and around the world, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands.
The deaths of the British soldiers. I would say that the deaths of British troops in Ireland for the first time in 50 years would be a definite advantage to the IRA.
The Provisional Irish Republican Army, Provisional IRA, officially known as the Irish Republican Army and informally known as the Provos, was an Irish Republican paramilitary force that sought to end British rule in Northern Ireland, facilitate Irish reunification, and bring about an independent republic encompassing all of Ireland. It was the most active Republican paramilitary group during the Troubles. It saw itself as the army of the All-Ireland Irish Republic and as the sole legitimate successor to the original IRA from the Irish War of Independence. It was designated a terrorist organization in the United Kingdom and an unlawful organization in the Republic of Ireland, both of whose authority it rejected. The Provisional IRA emerged in December 1969 due to a split within the previous incarnation of the IRA and the broader Irish Republican movement. It was initially the minority faction in the split compared to the official IRA, but became the dominant faction by 1972. The Troubles had begun shortly before when a largely Catholic, non-violent civil rights campaign was met with violence from both Ulster Loyalists and the Royal Ulster Constabulary, RUC, culminating in the August 1969 riots and deployment of British soldiers. The IRA initially focused on defense of Catholic areas, but it began an offensive campaign in 1970 that was aided by external sources, including Irish diaspora communities within the Anglosphere and the Palestine Liberation Organization and Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. It used guerrilla tactics against the British Army and RUC in both rural and urban areas, and carried out a bombing campaign in Northern Ireland and England against military, political, and economic targets, and British military targets in mainland Europe. They also targeted civilian contractors to the British security forces. The IRA's armed campaign, primarily in Northern Ireland but also in England and mainland Europe, killed over 1,700 people, including roughly 1,000 members of the British security forces and 500 to 644 civilians. The Provisional IRA declared a final ceasefire in July 1997, after which its political wing, Sinn Féin, was admitted into multi-party peace talks on the future of Northern Ireland. These resulted in the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, and in 2005 the IRA formally ended its armed campaign and decommissioned its weapons under the supervision of the Independent International Commission on Decommissioning. Several splinter groups have been formed as a result of splits within the IRA, including the Continuity IRA and the Real IRA, both of which are still active in the dissident Irish Republican campaign. The Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, is a Kurdish militant political organization and armed guerrilla movement which historically operated throughout Kurdistan, but is now primarily based in the mountainous Kurdish majority regions of southeastern Turkey and northern Iraq. Since 1984, the PKK has been involved in asymmetric warfare in the Kurdish-Turkish conflict, with several ceasefires between 1993 and 2013 through 2015. Although the PKK initially sought an independent Kurdish state, in the 1990s its goals changed to seeking autonomy and increased political and cultural rights for Kurds within Turkey. The PKK is designated as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the United States, the EU, and some other countries. However, the labeling of the PKK as a terrorist organization is controversial to some analysts and organizations. who believe that the PKK no longer engages in organized terrorist activities or systemically targets civilians. This view became controversial after 2016, however, as the PKK restarted its terror activities. Turkey has often characterized the demand for education in Kurdish as supporting terrorist activities by the PKK. Both in 2008 and 2018, the Court of Justice of the European Union ruled that the PKK was classified as a terror organization without due process. Nevertheless, the EU has maintained the designation. The PKK's ideology was originally a fusion of revolutionary socialism and Marxism-Leninism, with Kurdish nationalism seeking the foundation of an independent Kurdistan. The PKK was formed as part of a growing discontent over the suppression of Turkey's Kurds in an effort to establish linguistic, cultural, and political rights for the Kurdish minority. Following the military coup of 1980, the Kurdish language was officially prohibited in public and private life. Many who spoke, published, or sang in Kurdish were arrested and imprisoned. The Turkish government denied the existence of Kurds, and the PKK was portrayed trying to convince Turks of being Kurds. The PKK has been involved in armed clashes with Turkish security forces since 1979, but the full-scale insurgency did not begin until 15 August 1984, when the PKK announced a Kurdish uprising. Since the conflict began, more than 40,000 people have died, most of whom were Kurdish civilians. In 1999, PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan was captured and imprisoned. In May 2007, serving and former members of the PKK set up the Kurdistan Communities Union, KCK, an umbrella organization of Kurdish organizations in Turkish, Iraqi, Iranian, and Syrian Kurdistan. In 2013, the PKK declared a ceasefire and began slowly withdrawing its fighters to Iraqi Kurdistan as part of a peace process with the Turkish state. The ceasefire broke down in July 2015. Both the PKK and the Turkish state have been accused of engaging in terror tactics and targeting civilians. The PKK has bombed city centers and recruited child soldiers, while Turkey has depopulated and burned down thousands of Kurdish villages and massacred Kurdish civilians in an attempt to root out PKK militants. Hezbollah, Party of Allah, or Party of God, is a Lebanese Shia Islamist political party and militant group led since 1992 by its Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah. Hezbollah's paramilitary wing is the Jihad Council, and its political wing is the Loyalty to the Resistance Bloc Party in the Lebanese parliament. Hezbollah was established in the wake of the 1982 Lebanon War by Lebanese clerics who studied in the Shia seminaries Hawza Najaf in Najaf. It adopted the model set out by Ayatollah Khomeini after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, and the party's founders adopted the name Hezbollah as chosen by Khomeini. Since then, close ties have developed between Iran and Hezbollah. The organization was created with the support of 1,500 Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps instructors and aggregated a variety of Lebanese Shia groups into a unified organization to resist the former Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon. During the Lebanese Civil War, Hezbollah's 1985 manifesto listed its objectives as the expulsion of the Americans, the French, and their allies definitely from Lebanon, putting an end to any colonialist entity on our land. From 1985 to 2000, Hezbollah also participated in the 1985 to 2000 South Lebanon conflict against the South Lebanon Army, SLA, and Israel Defense Forces, IDF, and fought again with the IDF in the 2006 Lebanon War. During the 1990s, Hezbollah also organized volunteers to fight for the Army of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina during the Bosnian War. Since 1990, Hezbollah has participated in Lebanese politics in a process which is described as the Lebanonization of Hezbollah, and it later participated in the government of Lebanon and joined political alliances. After the 2006-08 Lebanese protests and clashes, a national unity government was formed in 2008, with Hezbollah and its opposition allies obtaining 11 of 30 cabinet seats, enough to give them veto power. In August 2008, Lebanon's new cabinet unanimously approved a draft policy statement that recognizes Hezbollah's existence as an armed organization and guarantees its right to liberate or recover occupied lands, such as the Shabaa farms. Hezbollah is part of Lebanon's March 8 alliance, in opposition to the March 14 alliance. It maintains strong support among Lebanese Shia Muslims, while Sunnis have disagreed with its agenda. Hezbollah also has support in some Christian areas of Lebanon. Since 2012, Hezbollah involvement in the Syrian civil war has seen it join the Syrian government in its fight against the Syrian opposition, which Hezbollah has described as a Zionist plot and a Wahhabi Zionist conspiracy to destroy its alliance with Bashar al-Assad against Israel. Between 2013 and 2015, the organization deployed its militia in both Syria and Iraq to fight or train local militias to fight against the Islamic State. In the 2018 Lebanese general election, Hezbollah held 12 seats, and its alliance won the election by gaining 70 out of 128 seats in the Parliament of Lebanon. Hezbollah did not disarm after the Israeli withdrawal from South Lebanon, in violation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1701. From 2006, the group's military strength grew significantly, to the extent that its paramilitary wing became more powerful than the Lebanese army. Hezbollah has been described as a state within a state, and has grown into an organization with seats in the Lebanese government, a radio and a satellite TV station, social services, and large-scale military deployment of fighters beyond Lebanon's borders. The group currently receives military training, weapons, and financial support from Iran and political support from Syria, although the sectarian nature of the Syrian war has damaged the group's legitimacy. In 2021, Nasrallah said the group had Tautawan fighters. Either the entire organization or only its military wing has been designated a terrorist organization by several countries, including by the European Union and, since 2017, also by most member states of the Arab League, with two exceptions: Lebanon, where Hezbollah is one of the country's most influential political parties, and Iraq. Russia does not view Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, but as a legitimate socio-political force. Antifa is a left-wing anti-fascist and anti-racist political movement in the United States. It consists of a highly decentralized array of autonomous groups that use nonviolent direct action, incivility, and violence to achieve their aims. Antifa political activism includes nonviolent methods like involving poster and flyer campaigns, mutual aid, speeches, protest marches, and community organizing. Some who identify as Antifa also use tactics involving digital activism, doxing, harassment, physical violence, and property damage. Members of Antifa aim to combat far-right extremists, including neo-Nazis and white supremacists. Individuals involved in the movement subscribe to a range of left-wing ideologies and tend to hold anti-authoritarian, anti-capitalist, and anti-state views. A majority of individuals involved are anarchists, communists, and socialists who describe themselves as revolutionaries and have little allegiance to liberal democracy, although some social democrats also participate in the Antifa movement. The name Antifa and the logo with two flags representing anarchism and communism are derived from the German Antifa movement. Dartmouth College historian Mark Bray, author of Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, credits Anti-Racist Action, ARA, as the precursor of modern Antifa groups in the United States. The American Antifa movement grew after Donald Trump was elected President of the United States in 2016. Antifa activists' actions have since received support and criticism from various organizations and pundits. Some on the political left and some civil rights organizations criticize Antifa's willingness to adopt violent tactics, which they describe as counterproductive and dangerous, arguing that these tactics embolden the political right and their allies. Both Democratic and Republican politicians have condemned violence from Antifa. Many right-wing politicians and groups have characterized Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization or use Antifa as a catch-all term for any left-leaning or liberal protest actions. Some scholars claim that Antifa is a legitimate response to the rise of the far right. Scholars tend to reject an equivalence between Antifa and right-wing extremism. Some research suggests that most Antifa action is non-violent. There have been numerous efforts to discredit Antifa by various right-wing groups and individuals. Some have been done via hoaxes on social media, many of them false flag operations originating from alt-right and 4chan users posing as Antifa backers on Twitter. Some hoaxes have been picked up and portrayed as fact by right-leaning media and politicians. There were repeated calls by Donald Trump and William Barr to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. Academics, legal experts, and others have argued such an action would exceed the authority of the presidency and violate the First Amendment. Several analyses, reports, and studies have concluded that Antifa is not a major domestic terrorism risk.
A drinking club with a patriot problem. As Proud Boys, I think our main objective is to defend the West.
Proud Boys is an exclusively male North American far-right, neo-fascist militant organization that promotes and engages in political violence. The group's leaders have been convicted of violently opposing the United States government, including the constitutionally prescribed transfer of presidential power. It has been called a street gang and was designated as a terrorist group in Canada and New Zealand. The Proud Boys are known for their opposition to left-wing and progressive groups and for their support of former U.S. President Donald Trump. While Proud Boys leadership has denied being a white supremacist organization, the group and some of its members have been connected to white supremacist events, ideologies, and other white power groups throughout its existence. The group originated in the far-right Takis magazine in 2016 under the leadership of Vice Media co-founder and former commentator Gavin McInnes, taking its name from the song Proud of Your Boy from the 2011 Disney musical Aladdin. Although the Proud Boys initially emerged as part of the alt-right, McInnes distanced himself from this movement in early 2017, saying the Proud Boys were alt-light while the alt-right's focus was on race. Donald Trump's comment, "Proud Boys, stand back and stand by," during the September 2020 presidential debate was credited with increasing interest and recruitment. After the remark caused an outcry for its seeming endorsement, Trump condemned the Proud Boys while saying he did not know much about them. According to the International Center for Counterterrorism, the group believes men and Western culture are under siege, using Western chauvinism as euphemism for the white genocide conspiracy theory. Members have participated in overtly racist events and events centered around fascist, anti-left, and anti-socialist violence. The Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, has called the group an alt-right fight club and a hate group that uses rhetorical devices to obscure its motives. The Anti-Defamation League, ADL, described the Proud Boys as extremist conservative and alt-light, overtly Islamophobic and misogynistic, transphobic and anti-immigration, all too willing to embrace racists, anti-Semites, and bigots of all kinds, and notes the group's promotion and use of violence as a core tactic. The group has been banned from numerous social networks including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. In February 2021, the United States Justice Department announced the indictment of members for conspiracy related to the 2021 United States Capitol attack, and the Canadian arm of the group folded after being designated a terrorist organization.